Hi, how you doing? And welcome back to another video from Average FPL. Before we get started, thank you for the support on the last video. Any likes and subscribes are greatly appreciated. It'd be great if we could keep that going on this one. So yeah, thank you. What we're going to do today is we're just going to take a little look at four different teams that are maybe mid-table-ish and probably have those bargain prices, those filler players that aren't going to be top hitters, but are those players that could maybe get you that differential points that just give you that edge in your mini leagues? Because let's face it, everyone's going to have sort of your Salah, De Bruyne, Haaland in your team. So what's going to give you that edge above everybody else, and where are you going to make up those point differences? I was going to look at five different teams, but to be honest, I couldn't really find five of those sorts of teams early on. So we've gone with four, and what I've got is the fixture lists up there, and I've picked four teams whose fixture lists I think are reasonable early on, and then a couple of players from each of these teams. So we're starting off with Aston Villa. Now, what we're looking for at the start of the season with your team is you're trying to sort of delay making any big major changes for as long as possible. Now, a lot of times people use their wild cards in the first or second weeks, and they're reactive to the initial results on the first few game weeks, and that's absolutely great. But if you can just sort of plan ahead as much as you possibly can do, then that really saves a lot of issues in terms of using up transfers or points on hits or wildcards or things early on. So with Aston Villa here, what we've got is I know they've got Arsenal, Man City, Leicester as a block there, but the rest of the fixtures they have are quite good around those, and I feel like that's the sort of team you could maybe have a couple of players on your bench. You could rotate in and out if you're sort of spreading the cost of your team. And the teams they're playing, Bournemouth, Everton, Crystal Palace, early on, they're not scoring many goals or conceding many goals against them. And also, you've got a good chance of scoring goals against those teams as well. So the first player I've gone with is Ollie Watkins. Now, with strikers last year, it was either big hitters or nobody. Now, Ollie Watkins is 7.5 million, and that is quite mid-range. It's an awkward price point for a lot of strikers, but he has scored double-digit goals in the last couple of seasons. Also, if you get a bit of a clear run in terms of injuries, I think he's a reasonable option moving forward to start with. Also, only 4.6% owned at the moment and got 131 points last year. That's a good effort. Now, bear in mind, these players you don't have to keep in all year. We're looking for the first sort of 10 game weeks who can hit the ground running. I think Aston Villa, they finished the season strong last year, and they're the sort of team who could get off to a good start in this one. Second player for Villa is Coutinho. Now, immediately you see a lot higher percent owned. He is cheaper looking at that midfield, and he's obviously got less points, but the reason for that is he joined in January. Now, he's got a full pre-season with Aston Villa. He tailed off a little bit towards the end of last season. He had a very strong impact in January. So it'll be interesting to see whether he can get that form consistently. He's going to be the focal point of Villa's attack, linking midfield to attack. So if they do score, it's highly likely that he'll be involved. But at 7 million, I think is a decent shout, to be honest. Now, the next team we have is Brighton. Now, I really like the look of Brighton's fixtures there. I know you've got Man United away in the first game of the season, but let's face it, you don't know what you're going to get from Man United, at the best of times. So, first game week of the season, before anyone's even seen how they're going to line up, I think it's not that big a problem. Now, we made a previous video where we said, Undav, a new striker for Brighton, could be a really good signing and a really high potential striker. He's not in my players now because we talked about him previously. So if you want to know more about him, check out the previous video. But Brighton here, I think they could, they got off to a really good start last season, and then their form sort of dipped when they were one of those teams that maybe didn't have much to play for. But when they're on it, they're really on it. they're playing a lot of, Fulham and Bournemouth as promoted teams in the first few game weeks. They've also got Leeds in there. I think they're good fixtures. So my first player from Brighton is Trossard. Now he get like Coutinho for Aston Villa. He's the focal point of their sort of, a lot of the play goes through him when they're attacking. Reasonable points last year. 6.5 million is the cheapest player so far, and also low owned. Now, if you look at those ranks below, 6 out of 219 for threat. He's a high ranked player in terms of the stats. Now, is he a player you're going to want all season? No, a lot of these players probably aren't, but what they are short term efforts in order to get good, more high hitters into your team early on in the season. Same goes for Tariq Lamptey. Now, in the previous video as well, we talked about how many defenders there are at 4.5 million. He's one of them. He is coming off quite serious injury last year, which is probably why he's low owned because people look at the points he scored and the minutes he played, and they're low. Okay, they're not amazing, and there is a bit of competition in Brighton's defence. But when he was fit, he did play, and he was very attacking. And I think Brighton, like we said earlier, are the sort of team that could get off to a hot start. Now, at 4.5 million, you can't go wrong, really. And I think if you pay attention in pre-season and he's getting good minutes, I don't see a problem with getting him in, as one of those cheap defenders. So the next team we're looking at are Newcastle. Now, Newcastle, if the season had started when Eddie Howe took over, I think they would have finished fifth. They had a really good end to the season, and I don't really see a problem as to why that wouldn't continue going into this one. Now, they have to be the most interesting team with the highest potential, probably in the whole league. I think you've probably got Spurs alongside them. But, in terms of those mid-table teams, plus the start they've got, I know they've got Man City and Liverpool, but apart from that, those fixtures look incredible. The first 10, if you isolate those first 10 fixtures and you say 8 out of those 10 look like that, you're definitely worth a shot at some of these players here with the upside they have, especially with Forest, Wolves potentially a bit more mid-table this season, Bournemouth, Fulham, Brentford in the first 10. I think you've got to at least get one Newcastle player in there. Now, I did look at Bruno Guimaraes as an option here. I haven't put him in because he's quite highly owned. I think Joe Ellington had a really good end to the season, and under Eddie Howe, he came into his own. He's now labelled as a midfielder. He plays further forward as well, and he will get chances. He started scoring goals. I know the transition for him has been a bit tough, but I think the upside is there, and he does play. I think he's starting to adapt to the Premier League, and he is one of those players that could get a few goals here and there. Is he going to score every week? Probably not. But he is capable of getting a brace on any week, and he's very much a confidence player. So if he takes in that form from the end of last season into this season, I don't see why that can't continue. The other one I had is Nick Pope. Now, in the previous video, I have Nick Pope in my first draft team. I just think he is a great option in terms of he makes loads of saves. He's used to playing for a team like Burnley, who, you know, concede quite a lot of shots, but those shots are quite from long range. I think the same can be said for Newcastle's defence as well. They're starting to get a bit more solid. And Nick Pope in goal, he's going to play every week. And not only is he going to get clean sheets, I would assume, he is probably also going to get a lot of save points and a couple of bonus points. I think at 5 million, that is a great price point for a goalkeeper this year. I think the only goalkeeper I would get in ahead of him would be Dean Henderson at Nottingham Forest. And I think those for that 5 million price point is just too good to pass up. And I feel like 6% owned, that's surely going to be a lot higher by the time game week one rolls around. So the last team we're looking at are Leeds United. Now, they scraped through by the skin of the teeth last few game weeks of the season, but Leicester did that a few years ago. And I'm not saying Leeds are going to go and win the league. There's a high chance they're probably going to go and get relegated. But new manager, had a pre-season, putting his own imprint on the team. He's making signings. I know they've lost Calvin Phillips. They're probably going to lose Rafinha. But just like the fixtures we've seen previously, other than one or two fixtures in there, If you take out that Man United and Chelsea game, you've got a good run of fixtures early on in your 10. Um, so I think, the players that I'm looking at here, Patrick Bamford, 1% owned, just like Ollie Watkins at the start, he's 7.5%, sorry, 7.5 million. Low point, he's coming off so many injuries. So this has a bit of an asterisk next to it in the fact that if he is fit, he's kind of the player that Leeds need to score goals. They missed him last season and they suffered as a result. I know they had other injuries as well, but if you lose your main striker who's getting you 14, 15, 16 goals a season, that's going to leave a big hole in your team and that makes a lot of differences in games. So if he is fit, I definitely think he's worth a shout if you've got money around that price point left over in your team, especially as a differential. The last player we're going to look at is Jack Harrison. So I was looking at a few leads, midfielders, new signings, Sinistera, but he's coming from the Dutch league and sometimes they take time to adapt. I feel like Jack Harrison is a great price point at 6 million. 1% owned, huge differential, and he is very underrated in terms of points that he scores for Leeds. So again, these aren't the players that I think are going to score every week, but can they get 120, 130 points in a season? And can they get the majority of those points? They come in a short space of time. So these players are maybe not consistent across a season, but they do get short bursts. And if these short bursts are at the start of the year, then you're going to be laughing all the way to the top of your mini league. So that is the final player that we're looking at here. Now, let me know what you think about the teams that I've chosen. I've tried to get, underrated teams with good fixtures. The players you might disagree with as well. Who would you put in instead? Are they good players to choose or have you got other ideas? Have I missed a team out here? Let me know what you think. Like I said before, any support on the channel is greatly appreciated. Thank you very much for listening, and I will see you in the next one.